A mother at my son's daycare center became obsessed with my husband and began stalking us. She moved into the building next door and tried to break into our apartment. My husband, Mariel, 34, and I, 32, have been married for 6 years and have a 3-year-old son, Everett. We live in a city where housing prices are sky high, so we were lucky to find a decent apartment in a good neighborhood with a good daycare nearby. We enrolled Everett there last year, and until recently, everything was going well. Mariel and I value our family time very much. We both work demanding jobs. I'm in healthcare administration, and he's a civil engineer at a reputable firm. Despite our busy schedules, we make sure to drop Everett off and pick him up together whenever possible. It's our special family routine that gives us valuable time together before we begin our separate workdays. Daycare is pretty typical. Parents rush in and out, most barely greeting each other beyond a quick nod or a brief hello. That's why Diana's behavior stood out from the start. Diana has a daughter, Liv, in Everett's class. I noticed her about 6 months ago when she started looking at me strangely during my morning drop-off. At first, I thought maybe I had something on my face or had accidentally offended her. I tried smiling and saying hello a few times, but she always gave me a cold stare or ignored me completely. After several attempts, I gave up and focused on Everett. Things took a strange turn about 2 months ago. Mariel had to leave Everett alone because I had an early meeting. That night, she came home with a strange story. Diana, who had never spoken a word to me despite numerous opportunities, had struck up a very enthusiastic conversation with him. In the span of about 10 minutes, she told him her entire life story, where she was from, where she went to college, details of her divorce, her husband leaving her for a coworker, and how unhappy she was with her job and living situation. When Mariel mentioned that she was a civil engineer, Diana acted as if he were a celebrity. She asked him a ton of questions about his firm and the projects he was working on. Mariel, being naturally friendly and trying to be polite, mentioned that I had also attended the same university around the same time as Diana, thinking that might help smooth over any issues she had with me. I laughed, joking that Diana had basically speed dated my husband in the nursery hallway. We didn't think much more about it, considering her simply a socially awkward person. The following week, Mariel traveled for a project presentation. I took charge of dropping him off and picking him up alone for 10 days. Every day, Diana would somehow appear next to me in the hallway or waiting room. She never spoke to me or acknowledged my presence, but she would position herself close enough to overhear my conversations with teachers or other parents. Several times, I caught her leaning in slightly when I was talking to another mom about weekend plans or activities for the kids. The behavior was so strange that I mentioned it to Mariel during our nightly calls. She found it odd that Diana didn't even try to talk to me, especially after being so quick to engage him. When Mariel returned from her trip, we went back to our routine of dropping Everett off together. 3 days after her return, Diana walked into the classroom as Mariel was adjusting Everett's backpack in his cubby, and I was across the room helping Everett hang up his coat. Diana walked straight up to Mariel, grabbed her arm, and excitedly asked how her trip had been and if she was happy to be back. Mariel, surprised by her familiarity, immediately pointed at me and introduced us. Diana looked at me with a strange expression and claimed she remembered me from seeing her at a homecoming event months earlier. This was a blatant lie, not only because we interacted at daycare, but also because I hadn't attended a homecoming event in years. From that day on, Diana's behavior became even more blatant. When Mariel and I arrived at daycare together, she would greet him enthusiastically while completely ignoring me, even though we were clearly together, often holding hands or with Mariel's arm draped over me. Several times, she would linger near the door during pickup time, obviously waiting for an opportunity to speak with Mariel alone. Mariel quickly picked up on her behavior and began deliberately avoiding her. She either pretended not to see her or gave a quick, polite nod before walking away. She told me she found her behavior toward me disrespectful in our marriage, and she wanted nothing to do with her. Despite Mariel's obvious disinterest, Diana persisted. The situation began to affect my enjoyment of our family routine. I found myself scanning the hallway for her when we arrived, tensing when I saw her, and rushing Everett throughout the morning just to avoid another awkward encounter. One afternoon, while chatting with another mom during pickup about an upcoming birthday party, I mentioned our address to coordinate carpooling. Diana was sitting at a nearby table, pretending to help her daughter with an art project, but I noticed her head tilt slightly in our direction when I mentioned our street name. At the time, I thought nothing of it. A month later, I was walking with Everett toward the park near our apartment when I saw Diana and her daughter coming out of the building next to ours. I stopped dead in my tracks, and Diana saw me. She looked equally surprised for a moment, then quickly turned around and hurried off in the opposite direction. When I told Margil about the encounter, he called the leasing office in our building, which is the same one next door, on speakerphone. The manager confirmed that Diana had moved into the adjacent building 3 weeks earlier. The coincidence seemed too great to ignore. The frequency of our encounters increased dramatically. Now I saw Diana almost every day in our neighborhood, at the grocery store, the coffee shop, the park. Each time, she completely ignored me, while making obvious efforts to position herself where Margil could see her if she was with us. Things reached a breaking point last month, when Diana approached Margil outside our building one morning, as he was loading Everett into the car to take him to daycare. I was upstairs, looking for a lunchbox I'd forgotten, and watched from the window as Diana tried to strike up a conversation with Margil. Even from a distance, I could see that Margil's body language was tense and uncomfortable. When I came down with the lunchbox, Diana quickly stepped away, but not before I heard her suggest a weekend playdate with just him and the kids. Margil immediately told her that any playdate would have to be arranged through me. Diana never followed up. That night, Margil and I had a long conversation about the situation. We both felt that Diana's behavior had crossed the line from merely annoying to truly concerning. The fact that she had moved so close to us after hearing our direction, combined with her persistent attempts to interact with Margil while excluding me, raised serious red flags. We decided it was time to address the situation directly. The next morning, when we saw Diana, Margil calmly told her I wanted to talk to her. When Diana acted surprised, he added that her pattern of ignoring me while I sought her attention was obvious and respectful. I then went ahead and told Diana directly that her behavior was inappropriate and asked her to keep her distance from our family. I pointed out that a daycare center wasn't a place for dating and that her actions were making us uncomfortable. Diana looked surprised. She claimed there had been a misunderstanding, that she had just happened to be walking with Margil to her office one day after a chance meeting. When I repeated this to Margil later, he clarified that he had walked in the same direction for a block after dropping off at daycare before saying goodbye and heading toward his office. He said he would never bring a stranger to his workplace and had simply been polite during their brief shared walk. A few days after our confrontation, Diana approached us during pickup, saying she wanted to talk. Margil excused herself, saying she needed to focus on Everett. I spoke briefly with Diana, and she angrily told me we wouldn't be friends. Coming from someone who had never made the slightest effort to be friendly with me in the first place, the statement was absurd. I simply thanked her for the information and walked away, leaving her standing there, mouth agape. The current situation remains tense. Diana still lives in the building next to ours, and her daughter continues to attend daycare in Everett. Margil and I now regularly talk about the possibility of moving, something we had considered before, but now feel is more urgent. We have also informed the nursery director about the situation, providing a documented record of Diana's behavior. Several friends have suggested that Diana's actions resembled bullying, which terrified us. We started taking precautions, varying our routes, being more careful about sharing personal information, and keeping detailed records of all interactions with Diana. The nursery's Christmas party is coming up next week, and based on last year's event, where Diana arrived in an inappropriately revealing outfit and spent the evening trying to talk to other children's parents, we're dreading another awkward encounter. Has anyone been through a similar situation? Any advice on how to handle this in the future would be greatly appreciated. I want to protect my family and maintain our peace of mind without escalating the conflict. Update 1. The daycare Christmas party turned out to be even more awkward than we anticipated. Diana appeared in a tight red dress, more suitable for a cocktail party than a children's event. Throughout the evening, she positioned herself wherever Mariel went, even following him to the refreshment table when he went to get a cookie for Everett. Mariel stayed close to me the entire time, making it clear we were a unit. What happened next was unexpected. Another parent from the daycare, Brian, approached us during the party and asked if Diana had been bothering us. Brian revealed that Diana had displayed similar behavior toward him the previous year, when his wife was away due to a health problem. According to Brian, Diana repeatedly sought him out, ignored his wife on the few occasions she was present, and even suggested outings for single parents. The behavior stopped when Brian's wife recovered and began regularly attending school events. We can see that Diana's obsession is nothing new, but unlike Brian, she continues to obsess over my husband despite my presence, which isn't anything new either, because Brian introduced us to 2 other couples who had had similar experiences with Diana. One mom mentioned that Diana had even shown up at her husband's workplace by chance, after hearing him mention it during a school event. With this new information, we arranged a meeting with the daycare director the following week. We brought Brian, who had already mentioned Diana's behavior to the principal, but had been told it was a personal matter between parents. Now, with several families reporting similar concerns, the principal agreed to monitor the situation more closely and ensure that Diana was never assigned to volunteer with Mariel or the other affected parents. For about 3 weeks after this meeting, Diana seemed to relax. He stopped waiting at pickup times and kept his distance at events. We thought maybe the increased supervision from the daycare staff had had an impact. Then, one night in late January, I was working late, and Mariel picked Everett up alone. When they didn't return home at the usual time, I texted Mariel. He called me back immediately, sounding stressed. He explained that Diana had followed him and Everett home from daycare, first walking behind them, then driving ahead, rolling down the window, and offering them a ride home because it looked like it was going to rain. Mariel firmly declined the offer and took a detour to a public place, a busy coffee shop, until she was sure Diana had left. We decided to file a police report. The officer who took our statement explained that, although Diana's behavior was concerning, it still didn't meet the legal threshold for harassment in our state, which seemed ridiculous, because it's as if the threshold only crossed when she'd chase you dressed as a clown and wielding a knife. The situation escalated again in February, when Diana somehow obtained Mariel's work email and sent her several messages asking for her professional opinion on some personal hobby projects. The emails included photos of the interior of her apartment, with some strange models, and requests for Mariel to come to her home to give her advice. Mariel forwarded the emails to her company's Human Resources Department and responded only once with a firm message, asking her not to contact him again for matters unrelated to the daycare. During this time, we noticed that Diana frequently showed up at places we used to visit, our usual supermarket, the coffee shop where Mariel often worked on weekend mornings, and even at the trail where I ran several times a week. Each time, she acted surprised to see us, saying she had only recently discovered those places. The most disturbing incident occurred in early March. Mariel and I attended a benefit dinner for the Everett Daycare Center at a local restaurant. The event was adults only and required tickets purchased weeks in advance. In the middle of the night, Diana arrived, saying she just decided to support the school, even though she hadn't confirmed her attendance or purchased a ticket in advance. She spent the entire evening trying to insert herself into conversations with Mariel, complimenting her outfit and asking about her current projects. What really unsettled us happened as we were leaving. Diana approached Mariel while I was gathering our coats and slipped a note into her pocket. Mariel didn't notice until we got home. The note contained Diana's phone number and the message, "Life is short. Seize what could be. She doesn't have to know." Mariel showed me the note immediately, and we agreed that this crossed a definitive line. The next day, we returned to the police station with the note, the email evidence, and the security footage. The officer who had taken our original report agreed that Diana's behavior had escalated to harassment and helped us apply for a temporary restraining order. The court granted the order, requiring Diana to stay at least 30 meters away from us, our home, and Mariel's workplace. The order didn't prevent her from taking her daughter to daycare, but it did specify that she avoid contact with us during our child's drop-off and pickup times. When Diana was served with the restraining order, she apparently went hysterical, thinking we were ruining her life with what we were doing. She told the order server that Mariel had seduced her and given her signs of interest, a complete lie that Mariel vehemently denied. The day after Diana received the restraining order, the daycare director called us. Diana had contacted the school, claiming we were harassing and attacking her. The principal, already aware of the entire situation, assured us that the school supported our actions and would work to ensure the restraining order was respected on daycare premises. Currently, we are in a tense, wait-and-see situation. Diana has technically complied with the restraining order, but we still see her because she lives next to us, and that apparently isn't covered by the restraining order. She's started dropping her daughter off at daycare much earlier than necessary, presumably to avoid running into us. The whole situation has put a considerable strain on our family. Everett has noticed the tension and asked us several times why Lee's mom seems angry with us. We tried to explain to him in an age-appropriate way that adults sometimes have disagreements, but it's difficult to completely shield him from the situation. We're now actively house hunting, hoping to move before the next school year starts. In the meantime, we're documenting every potential violation of the restraining order and maintaining close communication with the daycare staff. I never imagined that a simple routine of dropping the kids off at school would evolve into this level of stress and worry. We're trying to maintain normalcy for Everett's sake, but the constant vigilance is exhausting. I'll update again if there are any major developments. Update 2: A little over a month after obtaining the restraining order, we noticed that Diana had stopped showing up in our neighborhood altogether. Her daughter was still attending daycare, but Diana's mother started taking over. We cautiously hoped this meant Diana had finally gotten the message. At the end of April, we received a call from the daycare director informing us that Diana had withdrawn her daughter from daycare, citing a hostile environment. Although we felt terribly for the child, who had made friends and was well adjusted to her routine, we couldn't help but feel relieved. 2 weeks after Diana's daughter left daycare, Mariel came home from work visibly shaken. A colleague had shown her a social media post from Diana that contained references to our situation. Although it didn't mention us directly, the post described a handsome, married civil engineer who had been friendly with her before his jealous wife intervened. The post said they had shared meaningful conversations and emotional connections that his wife had misinterpreted. It included vague details about our neighborhood and the Everett Daycare Center that were identifiable to anyone who knew us. Several of Diana's friends commented, offering sympathy and suggesting that Diana was clearly insecure and threatened by her. Mariel immediately contacted our lawyer, who advised us to take screenshots of everything, but not to interact. The post, although inappropriate, didn't technically violate the restraining order, as it didn't involve direct contact. The situation took another turn when I received a social media friend request from a name I didn't recognize. Out of an abundance of caution, I checked the profile before rejecting it and discovered it belonged to Diana's ex-husband. After consulting with Mariel and our lawyer, I accepted the request, which was quickly followed by a message stating that he could help us with our situation. He therefore asked us to meet to discuss these issues in person. Thomas turned out to be a calm man who seemed genuinely concerned about the situation. He explained that Diana had displayed similar obsessive behavior toward him during their marriage, often fixating on male colleagues or friends. According to Thomas, Diana's fixations often lasted several months before she moved on to someone new. The most surprising revelation came when Thomas shared that Diana's pattern of moving near her targets was familiar to him. After their separation, but before their divorce was finalized, Diana had rented an apartment in the same building as a colleague Thomas suspected she was interested in. When that didn't work out, he moved into a house on the same street as his therapist, with whom he became obsessed. Thomas explained that he contacted us because Diana had recently contacted him asking to reconcile. During their conversation, she mentioned being forced to leave her apartment due to harassment from neighbors. Thomas connected the dots based on the details Diana had shared, and with some research at his stepdaughter's daycare, he found us. Yes, Liv isn't his daughter, which is why he doesn't have custody. Diana has been diagnosed with erotomania. When I looked it up, I discovered it's a delusional psychiatric condition that causes a person to believe another human being is in love with them, even though it's not true. She was being treated for it by her therapist until she began obsessing over him and stalking him. With this new information, we returned to court to request that the temporary restraining order be made permanent. The judge, after reviewing the evidence, including Thomas's statement and the therapist's statement, granted our request and expanded the order to include prohibitions on any reference to us on social media. Just when we thought the situation might be resolving, our real estate agent called with bad news. While showing our apartment to potential buyers, we had finally found a new home and listed our apartment. She discovered someone had trespassed on our property. Nothing was stolen, but several items had been moved, and a framed photo of Mariel Leverett was missing from the living room. We immediately suspected Diana and contacted the police. They increased patrols in our area. All of this proved invaluable just 3 days later, when Diana was caught trying to gain access to the back entrance of our building at 2 a.m. The police arrested her for violating the restraining order and attempted burglary. Diana spent 2 nights in jail before being released on bail with an electronic bracelet and strict conditions, including a mandatory psychological evaluation and treatment. Her lawyer argued that she was experiencing a mental health crisis and needed help rather than punishment. We have since moved to our new house in a different neighborhood and enrolled Everett in a new daycare for the upcoming school year. We've taken extensive precautions with our new address, ensuring no public records appear, and instructing friends and family not to share our location with anyone. The most recent development occurred last week, when Diana's attorney contacted ours with a settlement offer. In exchange for us not pursuing civil charges for harassment and emotional distress, Diana would agree to receive ongoing psychiatric treatment, move to another state where her sister lives, and maintain no contact with our family in any way. After much discussion, we have tentatively agreed to these terms, provided that legal safeguards are implemented to ensure compliance. Our primary goal has always been to protect our son and regain our peace of mind. We are cautiously optimistic that this chapter is closing, but we remain vigilant. It's hard to imagine someone as unbalanced as Diana being able to get her life back on track. Update 3. Diana's agreement was finalized approximately 5 months ago. She moved closer to her sister, entered an intensive psychiatric treatment program, and has maintained no contact with us. Diana's lawyer provides monthly updates to our attorney, confirming her compliance with the terms of our agreement. As long as she doesn't violate them, we won't take legal action, but if she does, we can take action fairly quickly. Those are the conditions. According to these updates, Diana has been diagnosed with several mental health conditions in addition to the erotomania her ex-husband mentioned. She is responding well to treatment and medication, and her sister reports significant improvement in her behavior and thought patterns. Our new home has become the sanctuary we had hoped for. Located in a gated community with good security, it's about 30 minutes from our previous neighborhood. Everett has adjusted well to his new daycare and has already made several friends. We've been careful not to share personal information with other parents, although that caution will likely stay with us for many years to come. Mariel's firm was understanding of the situation and allowed her to work remotely for several weeks during our move and transition. Her colleagues have been supportive, and the incident with Diana's social media post has mostly been forgotten. We had a minor scare about 2 months ago when a woman resembling Diana was spotted near Everett's new daycare. After reviewing the security footage, we confirmed it wasn't her, but someone with a similar appearance. Now, every time we see that same haircut, we think it's Diana. The officer who handled our case gets in touch periodically. He advised us to maintain our security measures for at least a year, even with Diana living out of state. That's why we have cameras around our property and remain cautious with our online presence. Everett, fortunately, seems to have processed the changes in his life without significant trauma. He occasionally asks about his old friends from his previous kindergarten, but he no longer mentions Diana or his daughter. That was one of the things that worried us most. But since he's so young, he moves from one thing to another very easily. For those reading this who may be experiencing something similar, my advice is simple: trust your instincts. If someone's behavior feels wrong or makes you uncomfortable, it's probably problematic. Document everything. Inform the authorities early, even if you can't take immediate action. Build a support network of friends, family, and professionals who understand what you're going through. We were fortunate to have resources that many people don't have: the ability to relocate, access to legal representation, supportive employers, and a strong community around us. We recognize this privilege and are committed to helping others who may face similar situations with fewer resources. As for Diana, I've worked hard to let go of my resentment toward her. Mental health is complex, and while it doesn't excuse harmful behaviors, it does help explain them. I hope she continues to receive the help she needs and rebuilds her life in a healthier direction. Thank you to everyone who offered support and advice throughout this nightmare. You've been more important than you can imagine. Update 4. Diana has become obsessed with my husband again. We don't know why, because until now, she tended to move on to another obsession after several months. But after a few months of therapy and medication, she stopped. When her sister found out, she tried to reason with her, but she ended up running away. Her sister contacted Diana's lawyer, and the lawyer warned us what could happen. Our lawyer also warned her that we could take legal action now. We waited a week after the notice to give the sister time to find her and get her back on treatment. But instead, we discovered she returned to the city and been hanging around our old neighborhood. She wanted to find out everything, including which daycare center we were taking Everett to, but no one told her anything, either because she didn't know or because she'd been warned. A neighbor contacted us and told us what was happening, and that was enough to start a legal case against her. She even tried to go to Marjol's workplace, but she just watched from the outside. Or at least that's what we were told, that someone who looked like Diana had been outside for a while. But at least she didn't do anything, and Marjol made sure not to be seen when she left work that day. In any case, the company has instructions not to let her in. The process was swift, and we've managed to sue her and initiate criminal proceedings against her, all in record time, because she had agreed not to be targeted by them and was receiving and continuing treatment. She didn't, and we did what we had to do. All the trials against her have taken no more than 2 months each and have proceeded almost in parallel. She was taken into police custody as soon as our lawyer informed the authorities, and the lawsuit process began. The latter took a bit longer, but we were able to receive compensation from her, which the judge ordered taken from some of her assets. While she was living with her sister, she wasn't working, but she still had a car and some money saved while she was still a functioning Karen living here. Then another judge ordered her to be sentenced to an institution where she'll receive treatment and help for her condition. But if she decides she doesn't want to be treated unilaterally, at least she won't be able to escape and try something with us or someone else. It's not as if she can avoid treatment there anyway. It's not like she has anywhere to escape to. It's not a maximum security prison, but she's not free to do whatever she wants, either. I hope this is my last time writing here. At least she now has several years to spend locked up, and her release will be determined by her willingness to continue treatment and recovery. But at least we know it'll be for a while. Maybe she'll start harassing new people in there, but that's no longer our problem. Unless he starts stalking imaginary people, which makes him even more unstable than before, then escapes from that place and begins a series of crimes. But from what we know, as long as the person with his condition, and other existing ones, chooses to get treatment, he can return to a normal life. For those who asked about his daughter, we don't really know. Maybe she's with her sister, or maybe she's staying with her biological father. We don't know that part of her story. I say goodbye to you all, and hope I never have to come back here.